Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Crescent. Crescent got her uniform and tier 4 with the mid-month, and it also happens to be the seasonal uniform, which means that for a lot of people, it's likely going to be a skip because you need to purchase something and get the tokens to be able to acquire her uniform. Crescent definitely provides value to people's accounts, not only for PvE, but to some extent PvP as well, and it's mostly because she is the very first combat female tier 4 that isn't basically reaching that status through a gender-bending uniform or type-switching uniform. It's a little difficult to say whether this uniform justifies that value. Her main usage will be for the combat female day in ABX to get slightly higher scores, and potentially try to get some of those rewards that you couldn't previously, and also being able to access and tackle some of the higher World Boss Legend stages, such as Ultron Stage 95, for example. But it's difficult to say whether she'll retain her value in PvE in the long term, since basically she has no competition right now, but as soon as another combat female gets a tier 4, then she could very well just be outshined by them and not really have much value from this uniform. But yeah, it's hard to say. I feel like the devs are probably just going to keep her as the sole combat female tier 4 for a while, just to get the most out of this uniform and the money that they can make from it. The uniform definitely improves her performance in PvP as well, but does fall short because they didn't really move around the effects like they should, or really update some of the effects to the standard for PvP right now. Either way, I'll be showing you what the character can do in PvE all the way from level 70 up to tier 4, as well as the potential build options that you can consider for PvP. All the initial PvE tests are done without a damage proc. The very first one I did was stage 29 without using her leadership or supports, and using the old uniform to see how it compares to the new one. The old uniform is absolutely terrible in PvE because you have damage accumulation for damage taken instead of dealt, so you have to waste a lot of time just sitting around, and her rotation isn't really that great. She could basically, even with all the updated cards and effects that I have, she could basically barely complete the first phase in the 2-minute window. With her new uniform, her damage accumulation is now for damage dealt instead of taken, so it's a lot easier just to rotate through her skills, and she actually has skills that you can cancel and layer on top of one another, making her rotation far superior, not to mention the higher hit count. With that, I was able to complete the first phase about 1 minute faster than before, and then was able to complete the fight entirely with about 2 minutes and 10 seconds remaining. If you're trying to build Crescent for PvE, I would probably recommend a CTP of Rage first and foremost, especially if you also want to get value out of her in ABX. If you don't really care about ABX scores or don't really plan on using her there, then you can also potentially leverage something like a CTP of Energy or Destruction, since her rotation is somewhat proc friendly. Speaking of a rotation, the one that I went with is to do a 5 delay cancel after the visuals appear or start to appear, and then do an immediate 3 cancel 4. When you have your ultimate skill, you basically do the same rotation, 5 delay cancel 3 cancel 4, and then you cancel that into the ultimate skill. If or when you get her tier 4, just use the skill before you go into rotations, and also make sure to use the 1 and 2nd skill cancelled quickly into that rotation so that you can fill up your ultimate and tier 4 faster. You can see that with the level 80 upgrade, I was able to complete the same stage about 1 minute and 30 seconds faster. Because I need to compare the performance of the level 80 to tier 4 upgrade, I also took her into a stage 95 of Ultron, this time using her leadership and 2 supports, and even without a damage proc, just having that level 80 upgrade compared to other characters who didn't have it before, I was actually able to complete stage 95 of Ultron with roughly around 1 minute remaining. I don't think Crescent's tier 4 skill is that special. She gains an attack increase and 30% chain hit damage at max rank. The chain hit damage is definitely nice for PvE, but the thing that I found most interesting is her tier 4 stats. At tier 4, she gains about 17,000 attack increase, which is quite nice. Her HP increase isn't as drastic as some of the other characters. It is still quite good at around 30,000, but the thing that is interesting about it is that Crescent is now the character with the highest base HP in the game at tier 4, surpassing Hulk, who was previously at 60,000, and Crescent is now at 62,000 base HP. In terms of the strikers to use for her, for both PvE and PvP, characters like Ghost Rider, Black Widow are going to be the most ideal for her, matching the instinct type and also having that iframe ignore as well as a damage increase. But if you've already used these strikers for other characters, just use a Justice instinct character that also has a damage increase on the striker skill that is attached to the tier 4 skill. Crescent does provide a little bit of a unique playstyle in PvE compared to other characters because she has her summon, which can also be targeted by the boss, making it a lot easier for you to avoid damage. With Crescent's tier 4 upgrade, I was able to complete the exact same stage of Ultron about a minute and 30 seconds faster than before. As I mentioned before, Crescent's main value in PvE will be for Alliance Battle Extreme for the Combat Female Day. She doesn't have all the cancel effects for the different seasons. I believe she is missing Burn, which you can obviously make up by getting her to tier 4 and using a striker that has that. But at level 80, without a damage proc, I was able to score around 10 million with her, which shows that she is quite decent for this particular mode. And especially because she is the only one that can get to tier 4, meaning that she automatically just will end up dealing more damage than the previous option, which was Hope. When I got Crescent to tier 4, I was able to improve her score by around 3 million roughly, especially because I now had the cancel effect on the tier 4 skill and didn't have to switch characters to be able to roar cancel. This is roughly around the same score that I get with Hope using a mighty CTP of Rage, though I think I can get close to 14 million with her, but usually it's around 13 million when I'm not really trying that much. And then if you're wondering what she can do with a mighty CTP of Rage, I was able to improve my score by another 1.3 million, which I think probably could have been closer to the 15 million score if I played it a little bit better. So if you're able to have access to a brilliant CTP of Rage, pretty sure you're looking at somewhere close to 16 million score, or maybe a little bit more than that. I'm talking about normal people. For those who are really into ABX, ABL stuff, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to hit close to 17 or 18 million, if not more. You can also use Crescent in ABL for the Human Female Day, though Luna is still a far better option. With a mighty CTP of Rage, I was able to hit close to 10 million, so people with a Brilliant should be able to hit 11 or maybe a little bit more than that, especially if they have a decked out build. But again, there are better options for the human-female restriction, and Luna is just far superior, even if you have her older uniform, I believe. For those that don't care about PvE, the character also has value in PvP, though it will be limited to just Alliance Conquest. She won't really work in Timeline because there are just so many characters with immortality and revive effects that she won't be able to compete. And similarly in Otherworld Battle, there are better options for those reasons as well. You can see that she has value because even at level 80 with a mighty CTP of Regen, I'm able to take out at least 1 life and potentially even 2 lives in the case of Wolverine of some of the top meta characters there. When I tested Crescent, I found that the 2 most ideal build options for her were either a CTP of Regen or a CTP of Authority. The first one that I'm showcasing is a CTP of Regen, and the reason that I think this is one of the top viable options for her is because she has a massive HP pool, so you can make some good use out of the shield that the CTP of Regen provides, and also because she doesn't really have healing. The problem with her latest uniform is that the AI focuses the 3rd skill first, which is the iframe ignore, and it's quite good, and then uses the 5th skill, which gains that penetration effect and is useful for the 3rd skill when she uses it again. But oftentimes she skips over the 4th skill, which has the heal effect, and even then the heal on it is very limited. Because Crescent has super armor passively in her kit, and because the bear also benefits from the HP increase and is often targeted, she doesn't seem to be super susceptible to being super guard broken, but can still be locked down. However, I found that the penetration effect from the CTP of Regen has the ability to basically provide her with the most survivability if it activates. So it has the potential to high roll as the most kind of defensive CTP if that activates, but if it doesn't, then she is basically just getting decent survivability from it. Although a mighty CTP of Regen might allow you to survive some crazy things that you normally wouldn't with any other CTP, only if that penetration effect actually activates, of course, I found that a mighty CTP of Authority, or a Brilliant if you have it, did provide her with the most consistent survivability because she has that 30% damage reduction passively. If you stack that up with the one from a Mighty or Brilliant, you can basically get pseudo immortality for quite a bit, around the 5-second mark. But it also seems, because the bear is always present for the most part, that it's going to be targeted, or at least there's going to be splash damage on the field, so you're going to be activating that sort of pseudo immortality or steal proc more often than you think you would. It's also worth noting that because she now has damage accumulation for damage dealt, it doesn't conflict with the CTP authorities damage accumulation for damage taken. They can potentially stack up or work with one another. So with those two CTPs being the most ideal, the authority being the most consistent, and the regen providing you with the high roll option, I would say that the next one for survivability would be a CTP of Conquest. I don't rank these as well as the other two options because the CTP of Conquest, although the wall effect is good, does also kind of split and provide you offensive capabilities with that top proc, so going to a Mighty doesn't really provide you with additional survivability. You can see from that Wolverine clip that I was able to survive with an authority and a regen, but not with a conquest. The obvious trade-off is that you can see Crescent is quite susceptible to reflect damage, so the benefit that the conquest provides is that she gains that reflect immunity when the top proc activates, and it makes fighting characters like Silver Surfer not as problematic. Although I thought the CTP refinement would be a potential viable option for her since she lacked healing and had a high HP pool, I found that the top proc from it would often activate when she was nearly at high HP, and it didn't provide as much survivability as the Steel Authority or the Penetration proc just outright stopping attacks. I didn't test offensive CTPs as I found that defensive CTPs were ideal for her, considering that she often will use her 5th skill to gain that 85% penetration after using her 3rd skill, so you want to keep her alive as long as possible so that she can go from the iframe ignore skill into that penetration skill and then back into the iframe skill. If you just equip something like a CTP of Greed, it won't really provide you with the survivability to gain the penetration and do the damage. And if you go with a CTP of Destruction, you can potentially have some good burst potential with her with the 3rd skill, but oftentimes in this current meta, with a lot of characters having high survivability, 2 lives, immortality, and so on, the CTP of Destruction doesn't really cut it unless you are able to basically revive yourself or also have 2 lives. You can see that even at level 70, I'm able to take out characters at tier 4 like Spider-Man or even Black Swan, having that type advantage, because the iframe ignore skill is now on the 3rd skill and isn't a counter anymore for her to sit around waiting to die, just immediately goes into it. You would think that it would be a major problem that Crescent doesn't have penetration on her iframe ignore skill, but oftentimes characters don't have Invincible that they open with right away, and even if they do, she can survive long enough to get penetration from the 5th skill and then rotate back to the 3rd skill. You also have to remember that by building her for survivability, she also has that reflect damage if she uses her 4th skill, so she can potentially just one-shot opponents that attack her after she rotates through a few of those skills. The actual crippling and main issue with Crescent is that she doesn't have sustain because she doesn't heal and doesn't go into that 4th skill. This means that she is susceptible to reflect damage, and is probably the reason why she died in this fight, because she just can't heal from the reflect damage or the damage that she takes from the splash damage to Io the summon or herself. You would think that with that massive HP pool and the combat typing, as well as all of the effects that she has in her kit, that she would easily be able to counter pretty much every speed type in the game, but because her abilities are scattered across all of her skills, the iframe ignore being on the 3, the penetration on the 5, and the reflect and heal on the 4, she does end up struggling versus some of the better speed types like Deadpool, who have immortality, or even characters like Quicksilver, who go into their iframe ignore, have penetration, and super guard break to lock her down. And because the summon Io is always present, there will always be a target for the opponent to hit and basically splash damage on her and basically whittle her down while she can't heal back up because she hardly ever goes into the 4th skill. You would think that for seasonal uniforms it would be easy for me to recommend this to everyone, but that's not really the case. This character is basically meta for ABX and valuable in PvE because there is no other competition. As soon as there is, her value will begin to drop and could potentially plummet if the competing character is better than her. And in PvP, the character is just mid-level AC at best. She doesn't have value in timeline or otherworld battle, and her major issue is that she doesn't have sustainability. She can't heal. And for a character with a massive HP pool, she really should have either passive healing. It would make the most sense if they leave the healing as is just on the 4th skill. Otherwise, she would need something like the healing move to the iframe ignore skill to actually make her really actually solid for PvP, or just do something else with the healing, have it on the 5th skill if not on the 4th skill. If this wasn't a seasonal uniform, I would say that it would be a decent upgrade for the character, but because it is, I'm not sure that I would recommend it to anyone. If you have the tokens or want to go for it, then feel free to, but I don't think that it really provides enough value to warrant the seasonal uniform. I'm not even using her for ABX because she doesn't provide me the next tier of rewards that would make it an essential pickup. I'm basically just using her as a mid-level AC character. I really think they could have made the seasonal uniform vastly better, especially for PvP, if they just moved around some of the effects to the different skills like I mentioned. And even for PvE, they could have at least tweaked the ultimate skill. She does have a lot of hits from all the other skills, but the ultimate feels like it takes way too long and oftentimes feels like you want to cancel it and go into your next rotation. Overall, I think it's okay value, but if you're comparing it to other seasonals, it's pretty awful, especially if you compare it to the gold standard, which is Ghost Rider, that still holds his value even after all these different seasonals. The next one that I'll be taking a look at is Ancient One, the uniform, and the tier 4 upgrade, so if you're interested to see how that does, make sure to tune in for that. If you enjoyed this video, found it entertaining or useful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and potentially share it with others. It can help them out, and it helps my channel grow to make more videos like this. As always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you, but the video is now over.